Hello, and thank you for joining me in this video. This, I think, will prove to be a very interesting conversation for me. I hope for you too, because it definitely taps into an area of interest that I've been thinking about a lot. And that is the topic of today. Before I introduce my guest here, the topic of today is all about high achievers and the impact it can have on you from a physiological perspective as well as psychological perspective. And we're talking not just high achievers, by the way, in sport. That will be a major part of this conversation, but also high achievers everywhere else in the corporate world and in any walk of life. The person I have in front of me here is David Lucent. David has gone from being a top level athlete and through that journey moved into a field of psychoneuroimmunology. We'll come to an explanation and description of what that really means. So David is here today as an expert in psychoneuroimmunology, and we're going to be talking about that term and the methods and the techniques that are involved in that, and how David works with clients using those techniques, and also how that links with high achievers and the negative effects of being a high achiever. So David, over to you. I wonder if you could just introduce yourself, give us a snapshot of your life from the peak of being a high achiever in sport to where you are right now.
Yeah, thanks, Dave, for having me. I'm really looking forward to this conversation because it's such an interesting topic. Yeah, well, let's give me just a quick snapshot of where I'm coming from and maybe where I'm at now. So I used to be in youth and throughout my uni years, I used to be a competitive athlete in swimming and in life-saving sports as well. During that time, I was quite successful in our country, which is in Germany, which is not a big life-saving sport nation, but we do use our little bit of coast that we do have to stay in the water and stay active. And during that time, I was in the national team doing a couple of world and European championships, and had a lot of time to train when I was still at uni. And what I experienced was that I tended to get injured quite often and tended to get sick quite often, and I never really thought about why that was, and I never really thought about which impact it could have in further life. So what I had was like a lot of shoulder injuries, back injuries, knee injuries, and a couple of years in, I had actually had to stop because I had to take an operation. I had to take surgery at I'm sorry.
Don't worry, life is real.
I had to get surgery on my shoulder, and after that, like I stopped being an elite athlete and had to start again, just being active again, which was quite of a difficult time for me. And after that time, or during that time, I started working in sports therapy, and I started working in a clinic for psychotherapy and psychosomatic areas. And during that time, I also I was always curious about how the topic of health is actually like how is our body working? What is happening if you're sick? What is happening if you fall into a depression? What's happening not just on the psychological aspect, but on the whole system of your body as well? And because I had some parallels, a lot of clients came in and they were not just like coming with their depression or anxiety. They also had physical problems. They had a lot of pain. A lot of them had bigger surgeries in the background, and somehow, to me, it felt like there must be some kind of connection. And I was telling them how important physical activity is, and all I knew from my studies. And then what I had is somehow during that time I hit a brick wall by myself, because I I was getting sick one year. I was having a lot of allergies, and at the end of that time, I had like a reactivation of the Epstein-Barr virus, which led to meningitis and encephalitis in my head. And I couldn't, for a while, I couldn't talk properly. I couldn't think properly. I had the worst headaches. I had problems with my visions. And that was really like a shock moment to me. And after that, I wasn't really sure how is everything connected. So what I did was getting into the research of why this happened to me, and that's where I got into the field of clinical psychoneuroimmunology, because in that field we tend to look at how everything is connected, all the systems communicate with each other. So I started realizing why I was getting injured and getting sick when I was an elite athlete, to why I was struggling with things like allergies, and why I was having this encephalitis, which led to me being hospitalized for quite a while. So it started making sense, and that's where I'm at now, and I'm trying to give something back, and to use what I found helpful for myself to give back to clients. That's why I'm so interested in psychoneuroimmunology, which is a terrible word to pronounce.
Absolutely. How do you pronounce it in German?
Psychoneuroimmunology. It's not better.
Yeah, you're right. Yes, and I'm not even going to try that one.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Great introduction. There are so many, but I suppose like anything in life, aren't there? There are so many links with what you've gone through to what I've also gone through, and where you are now. And when you said there that what you're doing now is giving back what you've learned to others, and that's kind of what I do, isn't it? Let's face it, and we're still on this journey, both you and I, aren't we? We will always be on this journey, and I would imagine you're like me in the sense that you don't ever want to get to the point where you've figured it all out. You love the fact that it's exploratory. And let's face it, in all areas of science, there is never a point at which you can say, that's it, all done. There's no more, because something else will always crop up, and then somebody else will say, now have you tried this? And so that's what life is all about.
And I think the more you learn, the more you understand. There's so much more you can still learn and still go out.
Yeah, totally. And that's what makes life fun. I talk about it a lot in when I talk about flow techniques, that the more you invoke the child within in this kind of awe-inspired way of looking at the world, the more fun you have, the more excitement you have, the more memories you have, and things start going your way, because you're applying that kind of mindset that we often as adults lose because of commitments or training in your case, or parental commitments, life, job commitments, etc. Could you kind of already described it anyway, but let's, for those watching, just have in your words, a short description of what psychoneuroimmunology means.
Okay, I can try.
Yeah.
When we talk about psychoneuroimmunology, you already have three words in it, which is psychology, you have neurology, and immunology. But it's a lot more than just three areas that maybe science focuses on, because when you think about life, when you think about the body, you're always in interaction. You need to be flexible, and the question is how can you do that? How can your body do that? And what it does, it communicates. All your systems in the body communicate. So if you're having a thought, it's not just in your head. Your thought has an interaction with your hormonal system. It has an interaction with your immune system, because that's how our body works. So And this it's like it's a meta science, and it's a connecting science which tries to understand how all those systems work and what leads to certain problems or certain illnesses if this system is not working properly. What are the pathways? For example, when you think, how can that, I mean, you heard about stuff like, oh, this doesn't feel right in my gut, this doesn't feel right in my tummy, when you think about certain things. And it's not just that you have something with your gut, but you have an interaction between your gut and your brain. And that's what we are trying to look at and trying to make sense of. And ultimately, which we do in clinical psychoneuroimmunology, is that we try to find certain interventions to make the systems work better and make the systems work again. Yeah.
This is really interesting because it makes me think, let's go back to athletes first of all. When you are training to be a top level sports person, athlete, you are quite often in the psychology, either because you are taught to be this way or it just seems right to be this way, that you're quite often in this psychology of, oh, I feel something there, never mind, push through.
Yeah.
Oh, that doesn't feel right. Never mind, push through. Come on, keep going, keep going. If you want to be the best, you've got to push through. You've got to force it. And of course, all of that is wrong. We know that. But instinctively, when you're training to be the best, you almost adopt this kind of David Goggins-like mentality, which in some respects is good. But when it means that you're ignoring the messages or that you don't understand what those messages are, and therefore you're pushing through, then at some point you become ill, injured, and then that is then the real message. The injury and the illness is the real message. That is your body saying, I've told you already. I've been telling you this for ages. Now look at what you've done. Then at which point, that's when you should listen. But again, especially in areas of athleticism and sport, people still don't listen. In other words, okay, that's really frustrating. I can't train anymore. I'll just wait up until I can. Still, and maybe I could start a little bit earlier than suggested. It's the wrong kind of psychology, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and that's what I had to figure out the hard way as well. Because every time, like, that's how it was. Your coach told you, okay, you need to work a little harder. You need to push through, and of course, you need to find the sweet spot where you need to work really, really hard to achieve something, but also you need to feel and to listen to your body when it is too much, because then you're damaging not only your body, but it's actually not really working for you. Because like what I do know now is that the magic happens in the pauses between the work and not the work itself.
Yes.
And there's, I don't know, I think it's a German writer or poet who said, I tried to look it up in English, but I tried to translate it into English, and he said, there was like a quote when he said, the soul talks to when the soul talks to the body, and the soul tells the body, what can we do? I told him to stop, but he doesn't stop. And then the body tells the soul, well, let me make him sick, then he needs to stop, or he needs to listen. And that's often how it goes. You don't feel what's your gut is telling you, what your mind is telling you, and then somehow you just have to, you can stop, but you can stop, or you need to stop when you get sick or when you get injured. So, and that's a very important topic, because I think being a high performer, being very fit, very good in your area, in your sports, doesn't necessarily mean that it's being healthy. So being healthy is the foundation you need underneath to be a high performer and continue doing it for a longer period of time, and to become maybe successful in another career later on. You don't want to just be a high performer or an elite athlete for like 2, 3, up to maybe 10 years. And then afterwards, you don't want to fall into a hole, but that's what happens quite a lot of times.
Yeah, totally. There is a documentary that is out now, and I've yet to watch it. It's called The Weight of Gold. And from what I understand and believe, it is all about that. It is about what happens when you've achieved the thing that you set out to achieve. And it's probably caused a lot of stress. And this is where we're going to move on to in a second, the stress and the related impact of both psychological and physiological stress on the body, on the brain and the body. Where does that lead to? You've pushed. You've worked blimmin' hard to achieve this goal. You've got your gold medal, or in a lot of Olympic athletes' case, a number of gold medals. You've worked up to this 4-year period. And then what? What happens then? And for a lot of athletes, if we talk about the Olympics, for a lot of them, they then suffer serious psychological conditions, and no wonder. When it comes to what I believe, and I'm guessing you probably do, when it comes to sport, athleticism, there has to be a balance. And the more you apply a playfulness to your training, and the more you start working on this and learning methods to slow it down, because I can imagine if you're trying to reach a goal and you've got competitors that are doing the same thing, when they post something on social media, or when they where they've said, right, you know, I've done my best PB, or I've achieved this or that, the psychological impact for somebody that is totally in that obsessed world. And by the way, that some of the obsessiveness can be, I'm sure, good for you, but the psychological impact can be huge, because you're thinking, he or she, they've now achieved the thing that they've set out to do, and I haven't yet.
Yeah.
Must train harder. You know, it must be so hard.
I mean, a little bit of encouragement through competitiveness is which is a big part of playfulness as well. When you're watching kids play, they're always competitive. And
yeah, totally. Nothing wrong with competition. Yeah,
that's nature. But if you're looking at Instagram and seeing all those people being so successful and so rich and so good looking, and whatever somebody has posted, and somehow you feel guilty of not doing enough, or you feel shame because you're not so successful, that's what happens. And if that continues on and on and on, those are negative thoughts you're having in your head all of the time. And that has quite a huge impact.
And it creates belief patterns.
Exactly. And they fall on, so often they fall on like fruitful ground, because maybe when you were young, when you were a kid, that's what you got from your parents as well. They told you need to work harder, you need to be smart, you need to be good in sports, you need to be good in school, and that's what you adapted. So take that on. And that's what I always, when I have a look at those, like because they become personality traits. And if I have a look at them, they have good sides and they have bad side as well. It's not just good and just bad, because that's one of the reasons why a lot of high achievers and high performers are doing so well for quite a while, because they were told to work hard. And so they do, and they achieve, they succeed, be it in sports or at uni or wherever. But you need to have a look at where does it come from, and where does it lead to, and what can we do to find a balance. Because and I saw that in my clients for a couple of years, that we had a lot of successful people. We had uni professors, we had medical doctors, we had successful people in the business world, and they all hit a certain point where they couldn't hold that level anymore, and something changed. Maybe something added up in life. Maybe they started a family, maybe some loved one died, and somehow they didn't have the healthy background, the healthy foundation, and that's the reason they got sick.
Yeah.
And they ended up being in treatment.
what I've certainly noticed, and I'm sure everybody has, is that the positive energy that allows a high achiever to reach the top in, let's say, the corporate space, or in as you mentioned there, the medical space, where you become a GP or a hospital doctor, it takes years to train. It takes a lot of energy, a lot of time, a lot of effort. What tends to happen is that they pour all of that positive energy into that one task without apportioning it to other areas of their life. So therefore, sometimes their commitments to their family, friends, weakens. In other words, they're not pouring enough of positive energy towards that, but also they're not pouring enough positive energy towards their health. And that's why you quite often go to a doctor and they look ill. They're out of shape, they're overweight, and you think to yourself, I'm now seeking advice about health from you, who is clearly not in a good, healthy state. And then you see people that have reached the top, business directors, some of whom have got a healthy balance, but many of whom haven't, because their total energy is around, their life becomes that job. And it's so easy to do, because that's how our brains can trick us and lead us to this. And then that's where stress comes in. And then the impact of stress has a significant effect further on down the line. Let's move on then. I mean, we've touched on this already with stress, but I wonder whether it's worth looking at this further. And the impact of all types of stress, because we know stress can be good for us. Small bouts of it. In Harvard, Sean Aker has done lots of studies about this. We know this. Short bouts of stress are good for us, but it's when it's long-term, chronic, etc. Yeah. So over to you on that one.
Okay. I think if we look at stress, which is a word that's used quite often and in so many contexts, and I think if we look at stress, we need to look at the stressors and the stress response, because stress is such a good thing. I mean, that's the reason why you're alive, because you have systems in place in your body which respond to certain stresses, and the main part, or the main thing they want to do, is to direct energy, to generate energy and direct the energy to the system that needs it. For example, if, like what we're doing now, we're talking, we're using our brain. So if you're having like a speech or something, you're using your brain, and your stress response is quite high. If I would measure my heart rate variability right now, I would see that I have a really high stressor, which is not a bad thing, because it translates to having more energy in our brain and doing the task and doing and having a solution for the problem. But the thing is that from an evolutionary standpoint, what we had like a stressor. Maybe, for example, it's the example we always use, but it's still a good example. So if you're walking through the woods, and somehow there's a tiger jumping out of the bush, what happens is all your stress axes, they ramp up, and your sympathetic system is firing, your hormonal stress axis is firing, and what it leads to is being able to either run away or climb on a tree, or if you're pretty good, maybe fight the lion or the tiger. But after that, the stress is over. Either you ran away and you're safe, or you climbed the tree and you're safe, or you got eaten. But either way, the stress is over. And that's from an evolutionary standpoint, what our system is trained to do and how it can work. But the environment we're living in now is totally different. We're having all kinds of stressors. It's not just having fear when you're walking through a wood that maybe a tiger comes out of the bush, but it's all our media around us. It's our environment at job. It's the toxins in our water and in the air pollution. we are having all kind of stresses, all kind of toxins, which all lead to the same stress response. So that's the only thing our body knows. It didn't have the time to adapt, the time to learn. So we're always having the same stress response, and that's the reason why we get why we become sick, or why we can become sick, because the stress axis, it doesn't shut down properly again. So we don't have the ability to shut it down. And if you're having a continuous stressors for quite a while, the systems get out of whack. So maybe your sympathetic nervous system is still firing, but your hormonal system doesn't do his job properly again, and they get desynchronized, and that's doing the harmful things to the body, because all of our systems are out of whack.
And typically, what have you seen? Let's say you've got to that point where your system is out of whack, as you say, more sympathetic, and for those watching, when we talk about that, we're talking about the autonomic nervous system, which can be split into two: the sympathetic part of the nervous system and the parasympathetic. Parasympathetic is everything to do with rest, digest, relaxation, and the sympathetic is the opposite: increase in heart rate, blood pressure. And of course, it stands to reason. You know, you look at the corporate world in particular, those with high blood pressure, unfortunately, I laugh, but I'm laughing kind of because it seems so ridiculous that we shouldn't allow ourselves to get to that point. But blood pressure is rife amongst those in the corporate space. So what else do you then, or have you seen, and what else could people see when they are in that state and only going downhill unless they do something about it?
Yes, so what we do see is it always has kind of the same pathway. So if you look at having like a desynchronized stress axis and having this the same environment all of the time, or the same thought patterns which lead to those stresses, what then happens is that your body still wants to generate energy, and what it does is, for example, it opens the barriers in the gut to extract like water, sugar, and salts, which then translate into energy. That's what our evolution taught us to do. So, for example, a lot of people have problems with their gut when they're having a stressful time for quite a while. Those are the symptoms that they come to us, because they're having problem with their gut, which then leads to maybe fatigue, foggy head, which tells us that there's another connection between the gut and the brain again. So it's always that we are lacking energy, and somehow in one of the systems is not able to keep that energy up. And if we talk about gut as one of the main factors, which then leads to an activation of the immune system, because when the gut barrier opens, all which is in your gut, like maybe bacterial, other pathogens, they get presented to the immune system. And then our immune system responds, because all our immune system learned to do in evolution was to protect us against infections. And the same thing with stress again. If it gets presented and it can like solve the problem, the infection is gone, it returns to normal. But if our barriers are always open and our immune system is presented with pathogens or other stuff, like maybe food particles, which then lead to allergies, which is one of the reasons many people have allergies, then it stays active. And when our immune system is active, it only knows survival mode. So, which then leads to maybe a low-grade inflammation in your body, and our immune system is taking all the energy. That's one of the main symptoms we have as a result of stress, chronic stress, is a lack of energy, being fatigued all the time, having a foggy head. And those are all symptoms connected to the stress axis, opening of the barriers, and activation of the immune system.
I was just thinking then, that in a way, although the immune system is very clever in some respects, it is also very basic in that it doesn't, it hasn't adapted significantly. It only knows what it knows how to do evolution from an evolutionary perspective. So in a way, we need to almost see this, the immune system, as treating it a bit like the person at the back of the class that you know isn't quite getting it. You know, where you know you're going to have to just just give them a little bit more energy, a little bit more of an understanding of what's going on the board behind, because you know that unless you feed them a little bit more of information, they're not going to get it, and then they're going to suffer. And I know that's a terrible analogy, but that's kind of what I was thinking there. And really, there is such a simple answer to this. If you think of our basic of that basic part of the response, the immune response, that the immune system works perfectly when given a set scenario of optimal health, really, in the sense that before we had technology, before we had food types that cause gut issues, but before we had the other forms of high stresses in our life that don't serve us, then we were living in a way where we weren't eating on a regular basis. We were eating good food, both meat and vegetable sources. We were moving a lot more. We were living in communities and helping each other. And that's really the answer, isn't it? I don't know how that applies to, by the way, those in the sporting world. I don't know. Maybe there isn't. You have an answer to that. But certainly those in the corporate space, there is no excuse. There is no excuse that currently you're putting in 80 hours a week or something ridiculous. You know, there's no excuse for that. There is no justification. And your answer is to go back to how we're meant to be living, moving your body, etc.
And I think that's the main solution that we have to those areas, to have a look at what we did back then and how that correlates to our health and what we can do to go back to those states. Because like what do you do when you're fatigued or when you're having lack of energy? Like what comes naturally to most people is eating all the time. But that's not the way we did it, because when you were hungry back then, you had to move to get some food, and that's how it was for thousands, 10,000 of years. Now we have a refrigerator in the kitchen, and every time we're hungry, the only thing we do is take 3 steps to the fridge and get our like pudding or whatever out of the fridge. So, and that's the thing we need to explain, because that's what a lot of people don't understand. They don't have the tools, they don't have the understanding how the system works. So one of the best things you can do if you're hungry all the time is intermittent fasting, because you're having a longer period of time where you don't eat, and where your immune system has some time to rest, where your digestive system has some time to rest, and then your blood sugar returns to normal, your insulin sensitivity returns to normal, and then you're having the benefits. But that's not what we're taught, and that's not what most people know, because what they do think is we need to eat more to have more energy.
Yeah. Or they're thinking, oh, I need to eat healthy. That's the answer. I need to eat healthy. But that's only part of the answer. So what they'll do is they'll think, well, if I gobble this now, because that's healthy, in an hour's time, I'll eat this because that's healthy. And as you say, they're not giving their body a break. And if it's food that's hard to digest, it might be good for you from a nutritional perspective. But if it's hard to digest, you're causing more issue. So you've hit on a really interesting point there, because the problem, I suppose, at the moment is that with the use of the internet, social media, everybody's being bombarded with messages around health. How do we optimize our health? You know, the big problem that we're in right now is that for most, or for a lot of people, they are suffering because of their poor health choices. because they're not living in an optimal fashion. So therefore, any viruses that are out there are having a bigger impact on their health. So that there will be those people that are in that sorry state that are now thinking about their health, but there will be other people that possibly are getting closer to that they're beginning to think, okay, maybe I do need to do something about it. And then they go out searching for answers, and there's too much out there. There's too much information out there, different diet techniques, et cetera, et cetera. And really the answer is to simplify it all.
Yeah.
And think back to what we used to do.
Yeah. I think that's one of the biggest things we need to look at. And one quote we had when I started my education in psychoneuroimmunology, there was one quote, and it said, the smallest change has the biggest impact. And I think there lies a lot of truth in there, because if we simplify, if we go back to what we did back then, if we release some of the things that we accumulated all in our careers, that's the thing that changes most. Because you can read all the papers, you can go to all the doctors, but sometimes it's just putting more stress on you, and you need to reduce. That's one of the main things you can do.
Yeah.
And there's so many simple things you can do that have such a big impact on your health. And if we go back to elite athletes, high performers in business, one of the main things we can do is to have a look at our thought processes. So, because I told you we were looking at stress, and one of the main stresses is psycho-emotional stress, or the psychosocial stress. Because if you're having those negative thought patterns, and those thought patterns, I need to do this, I need to do that all of the time, it translates to having your stress system active all of the time. And that's another thing. We need to have a look at our thought process and how to reduce that. What can we do to reduce those thought patterns? Yeah.
And you use solution focused stuff, don't you? Which is what I was taught in clinical hypnotherapy as well. And it's such a brilliant tool because it gets the client to come up with the answer. I think the problem with a lot of therapies these days is that as a patient, you're being told what to do. And the problem with that is that the brain doesn't like to be told what to do. And us as humans, we often don't like to be told what to do. I think one of the problems I've always had when I was working for other people was that I'm not very good at being told what to do. So the good thing about solution focused stuff is that you get the patient to come up with the answer. But let's touch on that. How does that help us right now when we're looking at stress? What would the solution focused work help them with? Or how would it help them?
So I think the first thing you need to know is that there's always a time where you can change things. So it's never too late to change something, because sometimes people think, oh, I'm way too deep into that stuff, I'm way too sick, I can't change. But there's always something you can change. If it's a small thing, it's a small thing. And I think the other thing is that you maybe you need to have a look at your resources. And that's what I do with a lot of clients. Have a look at what was driving you when you were younger. What were you what were the things that you were having fun with, and what were the things that really put a smile on your face? And then they have a thought about what's really their resources. If it's maybe like family, or if it's like some sports they played when they were younger. But the thing is, they are so put into their minds of negative thoughts. They just need a little bit of input, a few questions to have to get a different perspective, and that's when all the change happens. When you get a different perspective, and when you have a look at what your resources are, and what you can really do to continue a change.
Yeah,
I think it's it's a reframing.
Yeah, which and I think if we're looking at those in the corporate world, say, let's say you are a partner in an accountancy practice, a law firm. You've taken years to get to that point, and part of your psychology may be that you are justifying the amount of effort and energy and hours that you put into that job because it's taken you so long to get there. How could I possibly change my life when I've done all of that to get to here? It seems wrong for me to do that. Whereas if you look at what is the cost from a psychological perspective, from a physiological perspective, what is the cost of you continuing in the same direction?
Yeah.
And that's not to tar everybody that is in that role with the same brush. There are many people that are living healthy lives that are able to cope with a job like that. I pick those types of jobs at random simply because I'm aware of it from my corporate days of clients, that so many poured too much of their energy into that job because they felt they were required to do so. So to be able to ask them questions to reframe their life, and I would imagine a lot of them already starting to do this anyway, naturally, the last 2 years in particular are causing everybody to rethink about their life. But as you say, yeah, having some methodology that gets you to reframe your existence and what's important in life, and surely the most important thing is to live a happy life, to give to others, to make sure your family are okay, to have fun, and to reach your deathbed thinking, yep, okay, I've done everything I wanted to do. I'm good. I'm happy.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I think we've covered off a lot there. Was there anything else that you think it's worth us chatting about that we might have missed? Bearing in mind, I can edit this bit out.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think we covered a lot, but I think there's one important message we can maybe put out there, that because a lot of people that are hitting like a brick wall and feeling like you said, a bit in a poo, which
Yeah.
quite a nice situation. Yeah. Like I said, there's always something you can do, and some small changes have big impact, and you need to see that. You need to get into that feeling, because when you have a feeling that something is is changing, then you have the motivation to continue your path. You need to, I think, and that's what I think is so great about your channel, that you give perspective of how you can get into a better healthy lifestyle, what you can actually use as a tool to maybe get out of that hole a little bit further, and then continue your path. That's what you're doing. That's what I'm doing, and it inspires us. It inspires us to get better, to be better, and by better I mean healthier, not better in doing more work, doing more stuff at work, or being better in as an athlete. I mean, there's so many things you can do to become a better athlete, but I think the importance is to have a look at how you can, like you said, be happier in life, and have a focus on all the things around you that are still there. It's not just sport. It's not just business. There's so many things we can thrive at, and so many things we can enjoy, and to get back into that feeling of enjoying life again. That's at least what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
And trying to show others, and that there's a road we can take.
Yeah, totally. Well said, David. Thanks for this. Really good chat. So if people, I would guess there's going to be lots of people watching this that might think, okay, no, I need to do something about my life, and I think David could help. How do they get in contact with you? What's your website? And I'll drop obviously all of this in the description below as well.
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, you can have a look at my website, which is david-loosen.de, which is the German ending. And if you're from Germany, anyways, but I'm also happy to if you try to get in contact with me, and English is fine as well. Chinese is not so good, but
Yeah.
but English, German is fine. Just have a look. Try to get into contact with me, and I'm happy to talk to anyone who's interested in the topic or of health or psychoneuroimmunology. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. Yeah.
Great, excellent, David. Thank you. Really good chatting to you. Love the topic, and I sense that there's more on the horizon for us both.
Yeah, definitely.
Good. Thank you to everybody watching. I hope that proved useful and interesting. I hope it also proved as inspiration. If you feel like you need to change your life, if you want to make moves to improve your overall health, wellness, psychology, as David correctly said, there is, you're never at a point where you can't change. You just need to work on, that initial impetus of energy, and small things do make a big difference. Small changes. Okay, I don't always say this, but I'm beginning to say this now. But if you really like this video, do hit the thumbs up, because it is going to further help me, but also help others as well. Because topics like this, I think, are of use to many people out there. So I'd love to get this further out into YouTube world. And thank you all for watching. Goodbye for now.